Hello everyone, can you hear me okay? Brilliant. I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about two example projects of ours in the Internet of Things industrial space. One is from a protecting commercial properties standpoint, the other is tracking assets within hospitals. I'm Mike Hogg. I work for a company called Zuhlke Engineering. We're a software and hardware development house. We build solutions for other people. There's some examples of our projects here, but we've done over 10,000 projects. We're 50 years old this year. We're 1,000 people strong across Europe. We're expert engineers for hire. The first customer that I want to talk about is Dormakaba. Excuse me. Dormakaba are a manufacturer of lock-in and security equipment. I think sales last year of €1 billion. They sell an awful lot of locks and lock-in equipment. They came to us because they wanted our help innovating their business model. They were very conscious that the vast majority of their business was catalogue sales. They would sell hardware components to a reseller. The reseller would in turn sell that to their customers. They didn't have a direct relationship with their customers, and it was a typical product sale that there was revenue associated with the product, but they didn't have any ongoing relationship or ongoing revenue with the customer. What they wanted us to help them with is, could they define services, could technology enable them to evolve their business model such that they could build a relationship with their end users and offer valuable services to those users that they would pay for on a reoccurring basis. We went through a whole innovation process with them, where we started looking at a whole range of ideas. We tested, we did pilots. The end result of that process was a product that has been called the Kaba Xevo. The technology elements of Kaba Xevo, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. This is a talk about how technology enables business innovation rather than what the technology is. But just to give you a feeling, the Kaba system uses door locks that can be wired or wirelessly connected back to a gateway device that is then connected to a cloud service. Obviously, if you're in the security control access control market, security is important here. So there is belt and braces approaches using a variety of different level of security protocols, avoiding any Wi-Fi, which is notoriously hard to secure, connection to the cloud, and then using a very specific secure cloud-based services provided for Kaba by a trusted vendor. So the key elements of the Xevo solution was that you could understand where your locks were within a building. So if you've got a property that you want to secure, be that a sports center, a commercial property, an office or the like, that's quite exciting. I'll assume that that's not problematic. So if you, within the system, you can nominate zones of control. And you can configure within the system not only where the different locks and access control is, you can also configure with the system how the locks, the keys, sorry, and the passes that can be used to access it. And then most importantly, you can link those systems with specific users of the system. So now we have an access control system with people who have particular access given by keys or an app on their phone or a card that will give them access to the property. Now we have a direct relationship with those users, Now we can provide them real-time control of the system. So for Kaba, this is hugely important because they've moved from just providing the components that are making up the system to a full access control service which end users are interacting with. And the key selling point for them is that they've now, and this is very important for current generation users of systems, that they have a personal relationship with the system, that it enables them to, on the fly, grant access to other people. Somebody can phone them up and say, oh, we're trying to get into this facility, could you grant me temporary access? We can let people in. So it's still a highly secure system, but it's flexible, it can evolve for people's requirements, and this is a valuable service that people can really benefit from and are happy to pay for. I've whipped through that very quickly. I want to spend a little bit more time on the second example, which I think is probably a little bit more relevant to the manufacturing space as well, which is Linde Healthcare. So Linde Healthcare, global company, market leader in most countries where they operate. They're in the business of medical gases. They supply, on the left-hand side, that's a cylinder, so that's gases that can be used for mobile patients on beds or in ambulances. They supply plum gases into hospitals in the middle, and they also, for home usage, can provide gases for home. This is an oxygen concentrator that, rather than being provided with cylinders of oxygen, it can concentrate oxygen scavenged from the air. The big challenge for Linde Healthcare is product differentiation, because medical grade oxygen is pretty much the same whoever you buy it from. There is very little to choose from a product point of view between a Linde medical grade oxygen and one of their competitors. And it can very easily come down to a question of price, and it's the lowest price who wins. So Linde, before they engaged us, had decided that what they wanted to do was to improve value for their customers with the way that they delivered the gas. This was their existing gas cylinder. Hopefully you can see at the back there's a pressure gauge with traffic light indicators. So when it's between 100% and 50% full, there's a green indicator. As it moves beyond 50% full, we have a yellow indicator. Under 25%, it's red. Linde had identified that customers were sending back cylinders half full of gas. If a clinician is using the cylinder for a patient and they see that the needle is pointing to yellow, or worse still, red, they are reticent to use that cylinder for a patient. They'd much rather go for another cylinder. We're taught that yellow and red are warnings and danger, and so that cylinder is likely to be sent back. So what Linde produced was what they called the Live IQ, a smart digital valve. It's still got the traffic light pressure indicator on it, but it also has a microprocessor within it. It knows the flow rate that's been selected at the top of the cylinder. It knows the pressure and the temperature of the gas. Based on the current flow rate, it can determine the time left for supply. So you might have a cylinder that's very nearly full, but actually, if for a particular prescription of oxygen for, say, 20 minutes, it could well be that there's 20 minutes of supply left in the cylinder, so a clinician, a nurse, can confidently use that for a particular patient. So they developed this system, they made it available to their customers, and nobody bought it. The problem was that customers, they could see that there was some value with the system. Linde's business model is twofold. They rent the cylinders and they charge a refill cost. The users liked the story that their refill costs would be lower because they would be refilling less often, but they didn't see that outweighed the increased rental cost for the cylinder. So basically, the people who are making purchasing decisions in hospitals and in healthcare trusts really weren't interested in this product. This was the point that they engaged us to help them to understand how they could leverage technology, how they could create new value, and how they could make this much more attractive proposition to their customers. Fortuitously, when they were developing the cylinder valve, they had put a data logging capability into the system. They had put telemetry, so Bluetooth capability. The system was designed such that it could track how it was used and how it was stored within a hospital. When it comes back to Linde, back to the fill plant, they could download the data over Bluetooth and they could understand how customers were using the cylinder. That gave us various options where we could add value-added services across the system. Frequently in manufacturing and automation, we have systems that collect data. That data, we can derive extra value from it. However, we didn't want to fall into the common trap in these kind of telemetry instrumentation project that the project gets driven by the data and the technology is available to you. It's important that this is driven by the users and what they find valuable. In the context of gas cylinders, there's three primary users: the nurses and clinicians who are using the cylinders, the porters who are delivering, collecting empties, replenishing stock levels, and the managers who are managing usage, who are making the purchasing decisions, who are allocating costs. So we went through each of these in turn. The nurses actually really liked LiveIQ. They could see the obvious benefit. It gave them the confidence that when they were setting it up for a patient, they could understand that the cylinder had enough value. So the nurses were really quite happy. The porters, this cylinder made no difference for them whatsoever. It was just as heavy as the existing cylinders, so it was just as bulky to move around the hospital. But what we did find is that the hospital logistics, the porter activities, was really driven by a lot of paper-based activity. So in lots of hospitals that we went into, orders would be faxed down to the porters in the basement when particular deliveries or pickups were needed. It was ripe for optimization in the way that porter activity was managed. Managers, LiveIQ, the new cylinder, made no difference for them whatsoever. They didn't increase their visibility of how gas was being used in the hospital at all. They were very interested in understanding how it was consumed, the efficiency of that consumption, how the delivery was working, how to allocate costs. LiveIQ didn't help them at all. So what we did is engage with them in a similar process that I mentioned for Dormakaba, an iterative incremental approach where we started very early, coming up with a number of different ideas, value propositions that we thought would be valuable to the customer, and we put together very quick, easy to put together, low investment prototypes to test, so that they could test what was really valuable. Those prototypes that showed promise got extended to a pilot, so we did a pilot in Hong Kong. And the one system that really showed value then was rolled out for production. This is a very similar slide to the Dormakaba example. It's a very common Internet of Things instrumentation view. What the system that we ended up with, the cylinders, the Bluetooth, we're leveraging that so that they send their status in Bluetooth advertisements to local gateways. We send that to the cloud. We also did a number of mobile apps for configuring the system and for getting data directly from the cylinders. For the nurses, they got a mobile app so they could look at the treatment history from the cylinder. For the porters, we gave them a dashboard so they could understand all of the usage within the hospital. They could see where there was problematic cylinders that had been left venting to air or that seemed to have problems. But most importantly, for the managers, we gave them a complete dashboard so they could understand how gas was being used. For instance, here, the average return pressure, so within the hospital, how much gas is being sent back to Linde, not being used. In this case, you can see there's a downward trend. It was 25%, 24%. They're getting better, but they're still wasting almost a quarter of the gas that they're using. And they can use and there's a whole bunch of advanced analytics so that they can see trends, they can allocate costs, they can make sure from a fire department point of view they've not got too much oxygen in one particular place. They can also take a historical view and see how things are improving over time. The upshot of this was that the pilot was shown to Linde salespeople as well as end users. They really liked that. The customers were very keen. This has got rolled out to a number of American hospitals. It's now being rolled out to hospitals in Germany and Sweden as well. And now the buy-in centres within the hospitals are really seeing the value. It's helped Linde to win accounts in new hospitals and to maintain accounts and to take conversations away from price differentiation through to the added value that they can bring. That's my time up. So really the one message I wanted to share there is that technology does really enable a lot of business model innovation, but that needs to be led by the business value. I'm Mike Hogg. We're on stand P55. I've got the cylinder valve if you're interested in looking at that. If you'd like to discuss further, please feel free to come over and talk to us.